I'm AJ with Effect Radio, and I am super blessed to have a lady with me named Pauline Victoria. Now, what's unique about her, like all of us, she does everyday things, driving a car, she's a mother, she enjoys playing games, and she's went scuba diving. But here's the thing, she was born with no arms or legs, and she is out there to inspire women of all ages with her story. So I want to welcome Pauline to the effect.
Thank you, AJ. I appreciate it.
I am so blessed to have you. I've been listening to your story on your YouTube channel, and what a blessing that when you were born, your parents were so like, this is just the will of God. And real fast, in a nutshell, for our listeners, when you were little, did you realize how different you were, or did you just have a regular childhood?
I think for me, probably until was about 10 years old, I felt like I was a regular kid. Like no, I'm not different from other kids. I participated in games on the playground. I had friends. I was pretty outgoing, and I was overall a very happy child. But then I was 10 years old, and what happened at that point was that I was released from a program called the Mainstream Program. And what the Mainstream Program did is they took a group of disabled kids and put them into mainstream school. So my brain, my intellect works normally. And so I was in regular classes with other kids without disabilities. But then for activities like physical education or certain things, occupational therapy, that was available to me. At 10 years old for fifth grade, they released me from that program and I went to my regular district school. And I wasn't nervous at all. I was like, okay, I'm going to a different school. But then they showed this film and they said it was a film about kids with disabilities. And it was well intentioned to make the other kids more sensitive to kids with disabilities, such as myself. But I think it really just created this like weird dynamic because then I felt different all of a sudden. And it was funny in the film, they showed there was a kid when during the Pledge of Allegiance, the one of the able-bodied kids put his heart on the child with disabilities chest. I mean, put his hand on her chest, and a friend, a student of next to me, she leaned over. She's like, "Do you want me to put my heart on your chest?" I'm like, "No, that's quite all
Oh,
right."
oh my goodness. So, with that being said, what is your advice to people that might know someone that has a disability? How would you tell them to treat that person just like a regular person, right?
Yeah, I think overall, we have the same desires, we have the same fears, we have the same frustrations as anybody else. We all want to belong. We all want to be accepted for who we authentically are. And really, if you look at each person that way, then then whatever is on the outside, the physical, it doesn't matter. Or even inside, there's people with invisible disabilities that I acknowledge. So I think just recognizing that every human has the same core desires as you will help you be a little bit more relaxed. And something that I try to aspire to, because even for me, I'm not the most extreme disabled, even though it sounds very extreme. There's other people more different than me. And I just try to see each person through the eyes of God, right? If they're a person that was created, they were created perfectly as God wanted them. And so keeping that in the back of my mind really helps me see them as no different as myself.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I know that you've done different work to bring awareness to people that have disabilities. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Locally, I got really involved. I'm actually originally from California. California's system for people with disabilities is very progressive. And so I actually never had to really advocate for myself when I lived in California. But when we moved to Hawaii, it's a very different system and different culture. And so it really was the first time that I had to advocate for myself and the larger disability community. And so I did that by being on other nonprofit boards, and also on the mayor's committee for people with disabilities locally here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And then I also was able to serve for 10 years on the Disability Communication Access Board, which is at the state level. And so I really enjoy being able to make a positive impact. And it's good. It's rewarding work, but I don't do it alone. There's a whole community of advocates that are also working hard to create more inclusion and equal opportunity.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I asked to interview you is there in Hawaii, you're going to be speaking at a ladies' conference at the Puna Baptist Church. I believe it's December 10th. And they're making it affordable for everyone to attend. It's only $5. So that's just kind of to reserve your spot. And you can go to punabaptistchurch.org. Could you tell me a little bit what you feel you'll be speaking about at that event, or maybe if you even know yet?
Yeah. So yeah, on February 10th, it's a Saturday. So hopefully it's available to a lot of people who can attend. I'll be speaking, looking at the theme because the theme is really beautiful. It's the God who sees me. And when they asked me to speak and they shared with me the theme, I was like, okay, let me think about this or let me pray about it because anytime I go out and speak publicly, I really just pray to God that I'm just being used as a vessel for whatever needs to be communicated to the audience. And so just really praying about that theme and contemplating how my life relates to that theme. And as I started going deeper into where that theme came from, which is from the Old Testament regarding Hagar, and really understanding that even though I'm a very positive person overall, and overall I'm very joyful because of God. There are times when it is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. There are times when I get more frustrated. And for me, a frustration can be triggered because I dropped a pencil and I can't pick it up. It's something so simple, but it reminds me that I'm I'm at a disadvantage or I have missing parts that don't allow me to be as independent as I may want to be. But when I go through those times, those low times, it really is God that helps me through it. And I know that for me, it's a level of surrender that I have to go through and give myself over to God. And when I am at that point where it's like I have nothing left to give or I have nothing else by my own hand to be able to carry me through this, then that's actually when I encounter God because I believe it is the God who sees me. We have to be willing for us to be able to see him too and to humble ourselves and be vulnerable so that we can have that encounter with him. And I think there are several stories throughout my life, starting with my birth story, with how my parents met that challenge. I'm a mother myself, and I can't imagine if I just gave birth to my firstborn, how I would handle that. And so when I look back at how my parents handled that with such grace and faith, it still brings tears to my eyes. And it's their story, but it really set the tone for how I live my life up to now as an adult, and really making sure that I'm always in a place of vulnerability with God so I can encounter him and he can encounter me more personally.
Just complete surrender to God. I believe, if I remember correctly, your mom said it was just God's will when that she found out that her baby was born without limbs, that it was God's will, and she just surrendered to Him in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Her four words in response to what my dad was the one who wanted to tell her. And so when she became conscious after her cesarean, um, then he let her know that their firstborn didn't have 10 fingers or 10 toes. And her four words in response to that was, "Thy will be done." And I can't imagine a greater response to a
Yeah.
challenging situation and that of uncertainty. It's challenging not necessarily because you see all the challenges that are coming.
Yeah.
It's challenging because there's an uncertainty and a fear that comes with that uncertainty. And so I think that is where our faith comes in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now your parents had a strong faith going into this, but I want to ask you, I imagine their faith spilled over into your life as well. But was there a point that you asked God, like, why me? Why was I born this way? Like, was there a point where you asked God these things?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're a teenager, those teenage years are hard for everybody. But for me, I just felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. So very contrasting to how I was with a child, where I felt like I was just like everybody else. And as you become a teenager, you start noticing the differences, and you start wanting to get more of an identity as who am I. And so I remember at 15 years old sitting in church and being very angry with God. And I didn't pull any punches, I was just like, what else do I have to left to lose? So I expressed my anger with him, my frustrations, my like wondering of what is my life going to look like? And I remember sitting in church, and after I was done, I was quiet. And it was that moment when I could really hear God's voice say, "Your pain is not in vain." And so it was like that was enough. He asked, "Do you trust me?" And I said, "Yes." So again, I couldn't foresee every challenge that I would have to come up against as I got older or as time moved forward, but I could have the faith in God and trust in His process. Not having to understand everything, but knowing that everything is working to His highest good.
Well, everything works together for good for those who love God. Not necessarily good in the moment, but it will work out for his good, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, what kind of advice would you give someone? Now, I personally have known several people that have dealt with diabetes. I've known people that have had both legs removed, one leg removed. What advice, because you got to remember they're later on in life and they're
Mhm.
losing a limb, which is a big part of who they are, and they're wondering, what they can do with no limbs, or what advice would you have for someone that's dealing with a disability that's not like yours but similar, that they get later on in life, and how can you encourage them?
I think people ask me, is it easier when you're born with a disability versus when it's taken away later in life? And my response usually is, I've had more practice dealing with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, makes
Um,
sense.
and and so it's not about who is it easier for, but whether it's a lost limb or even a lost partner or a lost job. There are things that we're going to lose in life, and change is a constant in our lives. But I think what I would say to those people is what God said to me when I was 15 is that your pain is not in vain. Everything is being used for a purpose. And um, really having that moment with God. If He asked you, "Do you trust me?" And how would you answer that? And if you answer yes, then the surrender opens a place up for acceptance. And that acceptance then means nothing's broken. You didn't lose anything. There's nothing to fix. It just is. And but that from that place where it just is, where you just accept, you can really create anything. So it's rather than holding on to what could have been or what you did have, it's then what could you create now? And I promise you, if you do say yes to God, if you do say yes to trusting his process, because his understanding is higher than our understanding, we can't see everything, then what you create is going to be so much greater than you could have ever imagined.
Pain to purpose and just surrendering to God. And like you said, there's a lot of depression as well. Like you said, there's not always physical disabilities. There's also mental, emotional, and there's so many
Mhm.
struggles in this side of heaven, and there will be. And I think it's amazing that you're encouraging people where you're at. Once again, this is AJ on the effect, and I'm interviewing Pauline Victoria. She was born with no arms or legs. And could you let us know what's your YouTube for people to find out more about your story?
Yeah. So you can either go to Pauline Victoria Ahi. That was the channel I started when I started speaking, and I just related it. I just had it with my personal Gmail account, but I did start one for my business called One Leg Up Productions. So I try to post similar content on there. But One Leg Up Productions has more content related to people with disabilities. So if you are struggling with your disability in one way or another, then feel free to go to One Leg Up Productions. And not all of our disabilities look like a quote unquote disability. My mom always would say, well, everyone has a disability. And yes, it's true that we all have weaknesses or areas that we're not so strong at. And so if you're just looking for encouragement and inspiration, I invite you to my YouTube channel there too.
And real fast, what I've been real amazed about is with your disability, you have went scuba diving. Could you tell me a
Yes.
little bit what was your desire? Why did God put in your heart to go scuba diving? What was that process like?
So he didn't put it in my heart.
It's just
God works in mysterious ways.
yeah.
So what happened, in my life, I have come to terms to accept that there are certain worlds that will be closed off to me,
Hmm.
like climbing Mount Everest, or um, um, just certain things that because physicality, I won't do. And I thought being under the ocean was one of those things until one day I was at the mall and a gentleman came up to me and said, would you like to learn to scuba dive, or would you like to scuba dive? And I said, oh, okay, yeah. Like,
You're like,
I
that's
mean,
random.
yeah, I mean, trust me, I have lots of random stories, but when God will speak through people also, right? And give you
Yeah.
opportunities that you didn't expect. And so he said, okay, let's start the process. And he told me what I would need to do. And then, so I really worked hard, and a friend of ours down the road had a beautiful pool, and I could gain my endurance. And so for years I was working hard, and they were working hard also to try to find the right people to come, because for a disabled person, you need someone who's certified in helping someone with a disability for scuba diving. So it was a process. And I'm not going to say it was easy. It was extremely difficult. It was the first time during the test that I had a panic attack. And, you know, when you're put in a place where a panic attack is so interesting because it's like your body takes over. And it really shows who, like, your character, and like, who are you? And so in that, so they were saying, it's okay. So many people have to come back 2 or 3 times to get this test done. It's really hard. But I just looked around at everybody that was there to make this happen. And I just pulled myself together and I said, no, let's do it. And the moment I passed the test, they took me around and it was like the most peaceful feeling that I have ever felt in my entire life. I felt like I was flying. And I spoke about it at my church one time, and they said that, and I said, it was kind of like, you struggle, you do things the way you think you should do it. But everything in scuba diving is so counterintuitive. And it's like, I wonder if that's what death is like. It's like you struggle and you try to hold on to your way. But the moment you just let go, it's the most peaceful thing you'll ever feel in your life. And I have never been able to recreate that feeling with anything else. So I'm very grateful for that strange man. I don't even know his name. I don't even know who he is now, or if he's still even on island, but who looked at me and opened the door to that world.
That's absolutely amazing. And I have never went scuba diving. I do spend a lot of time in Hawaii, and I've done like snorkeling, but honestly, the ocean kind of terrifies me. And I recall asking my friend who is a scuba instructor in Hawaii, and I said, how, and she says a lot of people do have those panic attacks. So I'm like, I could see me being one of those to have a panic attack while trying to do scuba. So, I mean, like, I'm amazed, period, that anyone is able to go underwater and do scuba, much less you with a disability that was able to accomplish that. So I think you are absolutely awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Just real quick, one more aspect to that is that because of all the equipment, I can't swim on my own. Typically, I can swim on my own, but because of all the equipment so heavy, I can't do it. And so there's 2 people that had to work with me, and I had to be able to signal to one person, and they had to also be in communication. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved to make it happen for me. But that's life also, right? Like
Mhm.
we're not an island, and we have to trust that people also are going to be there to catch you or to help you put on your rest, that breathing apparatus when you need it. So I think it's really important to be able to trust the people around you, that they also want the best for you and that they love you. So, back to your other question about what I would say to those people is that you're not alone in it. God's got you, and he'll put the right people in your path to make sure you're also taken care of on this earth.
Yeah, I've mentioned that a lot because we try to bring a lot of awareness to suicide and depression here on the effect. And one of the biggest things is people feel alone and they feel like they can't reach out to anyone. And that's where it's amazing when you get into a good fellowship and you're with other Christians, you have a pastor, you have a leader, you have people, like you said, you're trying to go scuba with all this equipment and you're having other people that have to help you to accomplish that. And that's the same with our spiritual walk, depression. If you feel like you're alone, that's when so many people commit suicide. So I think that's a good reminder for anyone, even if you don't have a physical disability, that you're not alone and you can ask for help. Just ask, right?
Absolutely. And I have to ask a lot of people for help, including strangers. And I still am going to believe in human goodness, or in the goodness of humanity, more than anything you watch on the news, because I witness it every single day.
So, once again, this is AJ. I was speaking with Pauline Victoria, who is actually coming to the big island of Hawaii. Well, actually, she lives there, but she's going to be sharing at a ladies' conference, which is going to be at the Puna Baptist Church. It's February 10th. It's going to be 8:30 to 3 o'clock. You can register at punabaptistchurch.org. And you can also call for more information, 808-965-9970. And here's what's amazing. They're only charging $5, $5 for this conference, which includes lunch. Like, where can you get a lunch for $5? because it's their ministry and they want people to come get encouraged, meet Pauline, and fellowship with other people. Be so if you're at all near Pahoa, Hawaii, and come to the Puna Baptist Church, you can register for the February 10th event. And once again, Pauline, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me.
Thank you, AJ. I so appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing everybody there.